Hello and welcome back to Deep Rock, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Sludge Pump and all of its overclocks. We're going to be going over builds for all of them, including a vanilla one, and then we're going to move on to the overclocks. Let's go over the pros and cons of the Sludge Pump really quick. So the pros of the Sludge Pump are that it has really good AoE, it has a slowdown, it eats away armor, and it can choke off areas. It gives you a lot of AoE, similar to like all of Driller's primary weapons. It's also pretty ammo efficient. The major cons to the Sludge Pump are that it does have limited range, pretty much like all of Driller's primary weapons. That can be remedied because you can actually aim this up and arc it and fire it over enemies, as well as there are a couple other options to get you longer range with this. And if you're on a low gravity mission, that also affects your projectiles, so they are more likely to go where you kind of want them to, or at least they'll fly a little bit straighter than they otherwise would. And that's really about the only con to the Sludge Pump, is that it can be a little bit finicky to use, at least when you first get used to it. And it does have a charge time on it, so you do have to get used to that if you want to be using the bigger charge shots, but you can just fire this one shot at a time. Once again, I'm going to be using the site Karl.gg, fantastic website, be sure to check it out. This has a builder on it, so you can check out builds that other people have made, or you can make your own builds, and it'll show you all of the various stats that go along with these. So in Tier 1, you either have double mag size, faster projectiles, which also makes it so projectiles drop slower, because they are moving faster, and you have the air sensitive compound. This gives you bigger puddles and slightly taller puddles. So actually all three of these are quite good. If you want to be using the Sludge Pump more for just firing it one at a time, I'd recommend the high capacity tanks. If you're going with AoE, I would recommend the air sensitive, but all three of these are really good. Usually I go with the air sensitive compound just so I have bigger puddles overall. In Tier 2, we have more charge shot damage. We've got an increased amount of shot fragments, or we've got more damage per shot. This is just on the regular shot. So once again, if you're going with tap firing, I would recommend the potent goo mix so that you get more damage with the regular shots. Otherwise, these other Tier 2 options are really good. Usually I'll go with the atomized nozzle. This gives me more fragments so I can cover more area, and since my fragments are bigger, I can just cover even more area than I otherwise would. And Tier 5, we either have longer lasting puddles or we have more ammo. Usually I'll go more ammo here. The longer lasting puddles are perfectly fine. I do enjoy using that sometimes, but the majority of the time I'm just going with the extra ammo here, just so that I can use the Sludge Pump more often. In Tier 4, we have the Spillback extension. This reduces your charge shot ammo consumed by 1. So normally you'd have to use a charge shot and this would consume 5 ammo. If you take this, it consumes 4 ammo to do that. You can also wait until you're at the last 1 or 2 shots that are actually in your Sludge Pump and still use a fully charged charge shot for actually less. You can cheat it out, which is pretty awesome. Other option here is an increased charge time when you're using those charged up shots, which can be really good. It makes so that comes up a little bit quicker. Usually I'll go with the Spillback extension here so that I get better efficient shots, so that I can just use it more often. And then in Tier 5, we either have the slowdown from our corrosion, or we have the more damage from our corrosion. So both of these are also quite good. You can pick whichever one you'd like. Usually I go with the slowdown, and this is how I build my vanilla Sludge Pump. So this is set up for more charge shots, covering a lot of ground, covering a lot of AoE with it, and it makes it so that it's pretty ammo efficient. I don't run through ammo very quickly with the Sludge Pump, and it just makes it so it slows everything down so other teammates can pick off those enemies, which can be really useful, or I can pick them off of my secondary. And speaking of secondaries, which secondary should you take with the Sludge Pump? Well, they're all pretty good with the Sludge Pump, and they all come with their own bonuses because all of them have something that helps out the Sludge Pump. First up, we got the Sabata, and the Sabata for a basic build, I'd recommend this one. This is just more ammo, and in the Tier 5, you have the Catalyst, which can make it so targets explode and deal damage to other enemies nearby once they're affected by the corrosion and the Sabata. This can be pretty good. It gives you even more AoE, which is pretty nice. If you want a simple build for the EPC, I'd recommend this one. So this one just makes it so you can light your goo on fire and you'll just be using it with regular shots. This can be really, really useful, and if you light an enemy on fire and they walk through the goo, this can also light the goo on fire, meaning that you can burn other things around it. You don't have to run it like this if you don't want to, though. You could, of course, run it where you could do EPC mining if you'd really like to, because the EPC mining is quite good and quite strong once you get used to it. And then for the coil gun, I run this. This one also has similar synergies to the Sabata, where you can apply neurotoxin onto enemies with the Tier 5, which is very useful. So once they're affected by sludge, use this on them, and then they'll start taking even more damage over time, on top of the damage over time that they are already taking, so that can be very useful too. Now let's move over to the overclocks, and our very first one is called the AG Mixture. AG Mixture is a clean overclock that just gives you more projectile velocity and makes it so gravity affects your shots less, so you can shoot shots further. This is pretty good. This is a pretty awesome clean overclock. For the build I'm running, it's the exact same as my previous build. However, this time I'm not taking a bigger puddle in Tier 1. I'm taking faster shots in Tier 1. This is super fun. You can basically just snipe things across the map with it because the sludge is really not that affected by gravity at this point. so you can just fire it directly at things. It can be really good if you want to take this on like a Macterra mission. You can really build this however you'd like though, so if you find a particular build that you really like with the Sludge Pump, just go with that one, and the AG mixture will just be a bonus on top of there once you get used to the actual velocity and you get used to not having to arc your shots anymore. Any secondary works really well with this one. For me personally, I took the Sabata going to fully automatic and then just using this as a submachine gun at close and medium range. I have the Sludge Pump for long range enemies and for crowd control. It kind of does everything once you have AG mixture on there. Fully automatic Sabata is just a super fun way to build it. Second clean overclock that we got is the Hydrogen Ion Additive. This one just gets you more damage over time and more slow. So this one can be pretty good no matter what way you want to build it. I just usually take my normal corrosive Sludge Pump, and this is a slight bonus. There is kind of breakpoints that this one can hit, but usually I don't find that they matter all that much. So this is not an overclock I run a whole lot. I think you have better damaging overclocks than this one, but it's okay enough. If you want a little bit more slow and a little bit more damage for absolutely nothing, then throw it on the Sludge Pump. It's not going to be a bad choice. And speaking of not bad choices, you can take anything that you would like as a secondary. For me personally, I ended up taking energy rerouting with the EPC, and then I just built it for EPC mining. So I can just use a Sludge Pump for anything that I want it to, like I usually do, and then I can use the EPC for picking off targets at a distance, or I can use it for mining. Next overclock is a balanced overclock called Disperser Compound. This one is a really good overclock. So this one gives you more charged fragments, and it gives you more fragment damage. However, it makes it so your charge shot damage on hit actually does less damage. This one's really good because it makes it so you can cover an even bigger area than you already did. And for this, I built it the same way that I usually build my Sludge Pump, so I just have even more fragments, bigger fragments, as well as slowdown and more ammo. This one's really good. I would just say that this one is a straight upgrade to the AoE Sludge Pump, and it makes it so you just have even more ground you can cover. Makes it really easy, and this is probably one of the best Sludge Pump overclocks in the game, at least in my opinion. The loss in damage from the charge shots probably won't affect you that much because you can always just spam out the regular shots against big enemies, and you're probably going to be using those primarily against big enemies, where the charge shots you're probably going to be using towards crowds. For me, I decided to take Mega Power Supply with the Wave Cooker. This one's really good for clearing up jellyfish. It's really good for clearing up swarmers. It just gets you more ammo so long as you're not overheating the Wave Cooker. It actually doesn't come with any sort of downside, so that is really good. It does overheat it a little bit faster and you get more heat buildup, but not really a big deal, and it makes it so you have really long range. That's kind of the one thing that Disperser Compound doesn't have. This does help, and it makes it so you're pretty good against everything besides maybe like menaces where they can still shoot you at a distance. Next overclock is called Volatile Impact Mixture. This is a balanced overclock that gives you more regular shot damage as well as more charge shot damage. However, your damage over time and your puddles don't last as long as they otherwise would. This one's another really good overclock. This one might be the best overclock for the Sludge Pump. It makes it so you can do a lot of damage. This is the way that I'm building mine, and as you can see, this one is set up differently than the previous ones. So this one is just dedicated to single target damage. So I have a bigger magazine, so I can just shoot this out more, although any of them in Tier 1 are pretty good with this. More direct damage in Tier 2, more ammo in Tier 3, faster charge in Tier 4, and then the acid in Tier 5, but you could also take the slow in Tier 5 if you'd like that. This one's really good, especially if you want to take this on a Dreadnought mission, because unlike a lot of weapons, Driller's weapons don't really care where you're hitting the Dreadnought. Well, for the most part. Against the regular Dreadnought and the Twins. Against the Hive Guard, at least in his second phase, then they kind of matter. But in any other phase of the Hive Guard, doesn't really matter. You can just keep shooting at their face. You'll deal damage because this goes through and starts hitting them, eating away them with acid. One shot from this can do a surprising amount of damage to most enemies in the game. And even if one shot isn't enough to kill them, you can spam this out pretty fast. So if you need to kill slashers or guards or anything getting close to you, you can do that and you have a larger magazine thanks to this build. This one works really well with any sort of secondary as well. For this I decided once again to take the EPC, and I once again took a mining build, but this time I took Persistent Plasma. This is an unstable overclock that comes with basically no downsides. Its charge shot damage is weakened overall, but it doesn't matter because it deals damage over time after the charge shot has gone off, so you're usually getting more damage out of it than what you're losing. Simple mining build here, so if you want to mine with it, you can. It still works pretty decently at longer ranges if you need to shoot stuff at longer ranges. Up next, we have the Combustive Goo mix. This is the brand new overclock that was just introduced in this season, and this one is really cool. This one's a balanced overclock that makes it so your goo can now explode whenever it's heated up, which is pretty good. It does make it so you're locked into using the EPC, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. since that's the only way that you personally can light things on fire. If you're in a team setting, then you don't actually even need to bring the fire. Somebody else can. And this works kind of in a few ways. So this can blow up on every single goo puddle that actually gets spit out. If an enemy is on fire and then you shoot them with this, it will still cause it to explode. This will extinguish the enemy so they're no longer on fire, as well as once this explodes, your goo is gone. So you can't actually just have it lingering there and dealing more corrosive damage. The explosion damage from this is really good though. And there's kind of no real bad way to build this one. This is the way that I usually build it. You could go with the spill bag extension in tier 4, and then it makes so your charge shots aren't taking up as much ammo. But you don't actually need to be using charge shots for this, because even your normal shots cause things to explode, which is really good. Charge shots are really good for covering a big area, and that's what I have mine built for, just so that I can charge it up real quick and shoot it out, and then if I can light things on fire, it can then blow up and deal lots of damage to everything in the area. This one I also consider one of the best overclocks that we got this season. It is really good and very fun to use. For a secondary weapon, like I said, you're kind of locked into using the EPC if you want to light this on fire, and that's what I have mine built for, and that's why I'm bringing heavy hitter with this one. This just makes it so we get more damage per shot, and the fire is actually based off of the amount of damage you do. So building this all for damage is really useful, because with this you can light your goo puddles on fire with just 2 shots from the EPC. This one pretty much makes it so your EPC is only good for regular shots, not actually for the charge shots, but it's really good at those single shots, and it can be really, really devastating on robot missions. The explosive goo, to some extent, can still be good on those missions, but this one alone can be really strong on those missions. Moving on to the unstable overclocks, we have Goo Bomber Special. This one makes it so your charge shots now fire in a line similar to the Goo Bomber's goo. So this will just keep dropping puddles along the way, and then any enemies walking across it will take damage. This one just gives you more fragments overall, and it actually makes it so your duration is better, which is pretty good. This one doesn't really come with a downside other than kind of the weird way that you have to shoot this, because if you shoot it directly at an enemy, it's going to stop once it actually hits that enemy. Generally, you want to be shooting this up and over an enemy, or up and over and hitting an enemy. That way you cover the most area and you're getting the most damage per shot from this. This one can also be kind of awkward on certain mission types. It's really good on escorts, but on others it can be a little bit strange. It also used to be bugged and actually do a lot of damage, which was really cool when each fragment was doing way too much damage. So the build that I like running is our normal build, so I just have bigger AoEs, more area to cover, and better ammo economy with this, so that I can just keep launching this. Usually I'll try to launch this in an area where enemies are going to be trying to walk across so that they take damage and they're slowed down. That's what I find to be the best, and in general I'll just be trying to arc this over the enemies. For this I decided to take Gamma Contamination for the Wave Cooker. This one makes it so you can put radiation on enemies, so it deals damage over time to them, but you do have less ammo and you do less damage, as well as your shot is smaller. This is the way that I build it, and this is just to put all the status effects on enemies. So I can put radiation, I can put neurotoxin, I can put the corrosion on enemies. You can also light them on fire, so that'll be another status effect on top of it. And then our final overclock is called Sludge Blast. This one reduces your charge shot damage, as well as it reduces your overall ammo, and you have slightly longer reload time, but this does make it so you have a shotgun with your charge shots. This can be pretty strong. This is actually really devastating on things like Dreadnought missions. It does a lot of damage to them, and it can also be really good against other enemies like Stingtails or Oppressors. You can kill them very fast with this particular overclock. You can also run yourself out of ammo pretty quick with this overclock. So this is the way that I'm running it. Larger mag size in tier 1, more single target damage. This is just so that I can tap fire it more, because I find I use that more often than the shotgun. The other 2 options in tier 2 are actually pretty good too if you want to take them. More ammo in tier 3 so we get back up to the normal amount of ammo. Faster charges in tier 4 just so that I can use the shotgun really quick if I need to. And then the more damage in tier 5. Both tier 5s are kind of awkward to use with the shotgun, honestly. I think the damage is a little bit better, but if you want to go with the slowdown, feel free to do that too. This one can be really good on MacTerra missions as well, because you do have an acid shotgun, so you just fire it into an area. The further away you're shooting this, the more spread you're going to have, just like a normal shotgun. So at longer ranges, this is going to be less reliable. At very close range, this is going to be quite reliable. And once again, you're potentially going to want to aim above crowds when firing this, because you don't want all the fragments to hit the first enemy at the same time, and you just overkill like a single grunt and the rest of your shot doesn't go anywhere. You want to have this spread out and hit as many enemies as possible, or have that charge shot hit something big that will take the full amount of damage, like a Praetorian or an Oppressor. You could go with a secondary that has a lot more ammo. I chose not to with this one, and instead I went with the Subato with explosive reload built like this. This one can be pretty strong. It's actually really good at clearing up certain enemy types, but this particular build can run through ammo really fast. I also like taking this with the full auto Subato. I think that's really fun. And then you just have a shotgun submachine gun combo and it feels really good. With this one, you can put detonators inside of enemies and then cause them to explode and deal really high damage. Even more so if they're slowed down already from the acid shotgun hitting them. So that can be really good. And they can explode too thanks to the catalyst. So you can deal damage to other nearby enemies too. These are all the builds that I'd recommend for the Sludge Pump. There's quite a lot of other ones. The Sludge Pump is super flexible, which is very nice. It's a really good weapon. I really enjoy it. It's probably my favorite of the driller primary weapons. And it pairs really well with any of the secondaries too, depending on what you like. So thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.